My phone rang in the middle of my shift. A cop on the line said, "Sir, you'd better come home. Your wife's boyfriend is in your daughter's room. I'm not allowed to say more, but you'll see for yourself. Please hurry." I dropped my hammer like it was on fire. The crew looked at me funny, but I didn't care. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I jumped in my truck and floored it through downtown Millbrook. The cop's words kept echoing in my head. "Your wife's boyfriend is in your daughter's room." What the hell did that even mean? 15 minutes earlier, I'd been a regular construction boss fixing a roof on Maple Street. Now I was driving like a maniac toward something that sounded like every father's nightmare. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I'd suspected Mel was cheating for weeks, maybe months. But this was beyond anything I'd imagined. The streets of our dying New England town blurred past me. Empty storefronts, rusted chain link, broken dreams everywhere you looked. Just like my marriage, apparently. I'd been blind to think we were different from all the other couples who'd imploded in this place. I turned onto Oak Street and saw them immediately. 3 police cruisers parked outside my house. Neighbors standing on their porches, some with their phones out like they were filming a reality show. Mrs. Patterson from next door was practically hanging over her fence trying to get a better look. My stomach dropped to my boots. I parked crooked in my own driveway and ran toward the front door. Officer Sullivan, who I knew from high school, stepped in my path. "James, slow down," he said, holding up his hands. "We need to talk first." "Where's my daughter?" I demanded. "Where's Emma?" "She's safe. She's in her room, door locked." "But James," he paused and looked uncomfortable. "Your wife and her friend, they were in there when we arrived." The door was open. The world tilted sideways. "What do you mean they were in there?" Sullivan's face was grim. "Neighbors called in a domestic disturbance, shouting, crying. When we arrived, we found your wife and a male subject in your daughter's bedroom. The girl was upset, locked herself in the bathroom attached to her room." I felt something cold and deadly settle in my chest. Define in her room. "James, they weren't hurting her. But they were having an argument about something and Emma got caught in the middle. The male subject was partially undressed." My vision went red around the edges. I pushed past Sullivan and stormed into my own house. The living room was chaos. Mel was sitting on our couch, mascara streaked down her face, playing the victim for 2 other officers. She looked up when I walked in, and for a split second I saw something flash across her face. Not guilt, not shame, fear. "James," she started, "this isn't what it looks like." "Where is he?" My voice came out low and dangerous. "Upstairs," Officer Davis said quietly. "We're taking statements." I headed for the stairs, but Sullivan grabbed my arm. "James, don't do anything stupid. We're handling this." That's when I saw him. Alan Reeves, Mel's co-worker from the law firm, coming down the stairs buttoning his shirt. His expensive hair was messed up, and he had the audacity to look annoyed, like this was all just a big inconvenience. Our eyes met, and he actually smirked. That's when I lost it. I rushed upstairs to my daughter's room and pounded on the door. "Emma! Sweetheart, it's Dad! Are you okay?" The bathroom door opened, and my 15-year-old daughter emerged, tears streaming down her face. She ran to me and buried her face against my chest. "Dad, I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't know what to do. Mom and that man, they were fighting in my room about you. He was saying horrible things. Mom was crying and screaming, and I got scared, so I hid in the bathroom." I held her tight, fury building in my chest like a wildfire. "What kind of horrible things?" "He said you were pathetic, that you were too stupid to figure out what was going on. Mom was saying she felt bad about it, but he said you deserved it. He said—" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "He said I'd be better off without you around." The rage that filled me then was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't just about my marriage falling apart. This piece of garbage had been in my daughter's room, talking about destroying her family while she cowered in the bathroom. I kissed the top of Emma's head. "Go to your Aunt Sarah's house, okay? Call her and tell her to come get you." "Dad, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to handle this." I walked back downstairs, and every eye in the room was on me. Mel had stopped crying and was watching me carefully. Alan was leaning against the kitchen counter like he owned the place, still with that smug expression. That's when I did something that would change everything. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer next to the sink, and pulled out my .44 Magnum, the one I kept for home protection, the one Mel had always hated. The room went dead silent. "James," Officer Sullivan said very carefully, Put the gun down. I didn't point it at anyone. I just held it at my side, but everyone could see it. Alan's smirk vanished instantly, replaced by wide-eyed terror. Get out of my house, I said, my voice steady as granite. Both of you. James, please, Mel started. You brought your boyfriend into our daughter's bedroom, I said, my voice getting louder. You traumatized our kid while you two were planning my downfall. So I'm going to say this one more time. Get out of my house. Alan was already moving toward the door, his face pale as paper. But he couldn't resist one last jab. You're insane, he said. No wonder she's leaving you. I raised the gun, not pointing it at him, just raising it. Alan practically jumped through the front door. That's when Officer Sullivan tackled me. The next thing I knew, I was face down on my living room floor, hands cuffed behind my back, while my neighbors watched through the windows like I was the star of their favorite TV drama. James Peterson, you're under arrest, Sullivan said. He sounded genuinely sorry about it. As they hauled me to my feet, I saw Mel standing by the couch, no longer crying. She was talking quietly to one of the other officers, and I caught fragments of what she was saying. History of anger issues threatens me regularly. I've been afraid for months. Even in handcuffs, even as they dragged me toward the door, I had to admire her performance. She was already spinning the story, already making herself the victim and me the villain. But what really got me was the look on her face when she thought no one was watching. Not scared, not upset, satisfied. This had been her plan all along. They put me in the back of the police cruiser, and as we drove away from my house, I saw the neighbors clustered on their porches, talking and pointing. By tomorrow, everyone in Millbrook would know that James Peterson had pulled a gun on his wife and her boyfriend. They'd know he was unhinged, dangerous, not to be trusted. The narrative was already being written, and I wasn't the hero. At the police station, they let me call my lawyer, Bob Kingston. He'd gone to school with me and had handled the paperwork when I'd started my construction business 5 years ago. James, he said when he arrived at the station, what in the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that some piece of garbage was in my daughter's bedroom talking about destroying her family while she hid in the bathroom crying. Bob sighed and rubbed his temples. That's not how it's going to play in court. You pulled a weapon. There were witnesses. Mel's already talking to a divorce attorney. Let me guess. She's claiming I'm abusive. Worse, she's claiming you're unstable. The incident today is Exhibit A. They held me overnight, which meant I got to spend 12 hours in a cell thinking about how completely I'd been played. Mel hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been setting me up, waiting for me to react exactly the way I had. The next morning, they released me on my own recognizance with a restraining order. I couldn't go within 500 feet of my own house. I couldn't contact Mel directly. I couldn't see Emma unsupervised. With one carefully orchestrated incident, my wife had turned me into the villain of my own life. I drove to the Motel 6 on the edge of town and rented a room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Then I sat on the saggy bed and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. If you want to know the truth, meet me at the old textile mill. Come alone. I stared at the message for a full minute. Every instinct I had told me this was either a trap or some kind of scam. But what did I have left to lose? An hour later, I was standing in the abandoned parking lot of Millbrook Textiles, a factory that had been closed since I was in high school. The building was a monument to everything that was dying in this town. Broken windows, rusted metal, weeds growing through the concrete. I was about to give up and leave when I heard footsteps behind me. You came. I turned around and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Magnolia Hart, Mel's younger sister. I hadn't seen Magnolia in almost 2 years, not since the big family blow-up that had gotten her unofficially banned from family gatherings. She was 27, with short dark hair and more tattoos than I remembered. She'd always been the black sheep of the Hart family, the one who called out their bullcrap when everyone else just smiled and pretended everything was perfect. Magnolia? I said. What are you doing here? Saving your ass, apparently. She walked closer and I could see she was furious. Do you have any idea what my sister is planning? Besides destroying my life? No, enlighten me. Magnolia pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text conversation. The names had been blocked out, but I recognized Mel's writing style immediately. Phase 1 complete. James took the bait perfectly. Now everyone thinks he's dangerous. What about the daughter? Emma will side with me once she realizes James is the problem. Kids always go with the stable parent. And the business? That's phase 2. James signed those papers 2 years ago, putting me as co-owner. Once I get him declared unfit, I'll have full control. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. She's going after the business too? Oh, it gets better. Magnolia scrolled to another screenshot. This is from last week. Alan thinks James might figure it out. Should we be worried? James is an idiot. He's so busy working, he doesn't pay attention to anything. Even if he suspects something, he'll never be able to prove it. What if he gets violent? Even better. Then I can play the scared wife and take everything. I was quiet for a long moment, processing what I was seeing. Why are you showing me this? Because I hate my family, Magnolia said simply. I hate their fake smiles and their fake concern and the way they think they're better than everyone else. Mel especially. She's been looking down on you since the day you got married, James. She thinks you're beneath her. Then why did she marry me? Because you had something she wanted. Your business, your house, your stability. But now she's found someone she thinks is more her speed and she wants to trade up. Magnolia's voice was bitter. Alan makes twice what you do and he doesn't have dirt under his fingernails. I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. How long have you known? About the affair? 6 months? About the plan to destroy you? 3 months? She looked genuinely apologetic. I thought about telling you sooner, but I needed proof. And honestly, I wasn't sure you'd believe me. She was probably right about that. 6 months ago, I'd still thought my marriage was solid. I trusted Mel completely. What do you want from me? I asked. Magnolia's smile was sharp as a blade. I want to watch my sister's perfect little world burn down around her, and I want to help you light the match. Why would you help me? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and because Mel's been screwing over people I care about for years. It's time someone screwed her back. I looked at this woman who was offering to be my ally in a war I hadn't even realized I was fighting. 3 days ago, I'd been a happily married construction worker with a solid business and a good relationship with my daughter. Now I was living in a motel, facing criminal charges, and planning revenge against my own wife. What did you have in mind? I asked. Magnolia's grin was predatory. Oh, James, I thought you'd never ask. Over the next hour, Magnolia laid out everything she knew. Mel and Alan had been planning this for months, maybe longer. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Magnolia had screenshots of text messages, copies of emails, even some audio recordings she'd made when Mel thought she was alone. The picture that emerged was damning. Mel hadn't just been cheating. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation, telling people I was controlling and abusive, setting up the narrative that would justify her leaving me, and taking everything I'd worked for. She's been draining your joint accounts little by little, Magnolia explained, moving money into an account Alan set up for her. She's got almost $50,000 stashed away. 50,000? That was more than half our savings. And she's been telling people at the law firm that you hit her. Nothing she can prove, just planting seeds, making people think you're dangerous. I thought about how quickly the cops had believed her story yesterday, how readily the neighbors had assumed I was the bad guy. The incident yesterday wasn't an accident, I realized. She wanted me to lose my temper. Of course she did. Now she has witnesses to your violent behavior. She's going to use it to get full custody of Emma and control of your business. The rage that had been simmering in my chest flared into something white-hot, over my dead body. That's the spirit, Magnolia said. But if you want to win this, you're going to have to be smarter than she is. Angrier isn't going to cut it. You need to be strategic. What do you suggest? Magnolia's eyes gleamed. I suggest we give my dear sister exactly what she deserves. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Magnolia had access to information I could never get on my own. Family secrets, financial records, personal details about Alan that could be used against him. She also had something even more valuable. She knew how Mel thought. My sister's biggest weakness is her ego, Magnolia explained. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else, especially you. She's so convinced you're just a dumb construction worker that she's gotten sloppy. We can use that. How? Phase 1 is exposure. We make Alan's wife aware of what's going on. Sharon Reeves is a nice lady, and she doesn't deserve what Alan's putting her through. You know his wife? I used to work with her at the hospital before I got fired. Magnolia's expression darkened. Another thing my family held against me. Anyway, Sharon thinks her husband is working late every night. She has no idea he's working late on my sister. And phase 2? Phase 2 is where we get creative. See, Alan's got a reputation to protect. He's up for partner at his firm next year. A public scandal involving adultery and financial fraud would be problematic for his career. I was starting to see where this was going. You want to destroy him professionally. I want to destroy him completely, just like they were planning to do to you. We agreed to start with Alan. Mel was smart and careful, but Alan was arrogant. He'd be easier to trip up. There's something else you should know, Magnolia said as we prepared to leave the mill. Emma doesn't hate you. She's confused and scared, but she doesn't hate you. Mel's been working on her, trying to turn her against you, but it's not working as well as she hoped. That was the first good news I'd heard in days. How do you know? Because Emma calls me sometimes. She's been doing it for months, whenever she feels like she can't talk to Mel about something. She knows something's wrong between you and her mother, but she doesn't understand what. What has she said? That you've been sad lately. That Mel's been acting weird, staying late at work, taking phone calls in private. Emma's not stupid, James. She can see that something's off. As I drove back to the motel, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just hope that I could save my marriage. That ship had sailed. But hope that I could save myself. Hope that I could protect my daughter and my business and maybe, just maybe, come out of this mess as something other than the villain. Mel thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She was about to find out how wrong she was. The next morning I got to work. Not construction work, revenge work. First I called my foreman, Danny Martinez, and told him I'd be out for a few days dealing with personal issues. Danny had worked for me for 3 years, and I trusted him to keep the business running smoothly. Then I drove to the office supply store and bought a prepaid phone, a small digital recorder, and a few other items I thought I might need. After that, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for clothes. Not work clothes, but nice clothes. If I was going to war with lawyers and law firms, I needed to look the part. By noon, I was sitting in the parking lot of Reeves & Associates, watching Alan's BMW in the employee lot. According to Magnolia, he usually left for lunch around 12:30, and today was no exception. I followed him to Romano's, an upscale Italian place downtown. Alan met someone there, a woman I didn't recognize, probably another lawyer from his firm. They sat at a corner table and spent the next hour talking and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. While Alan was enjoying his expensive lunch, I was across the street making a phone call. Sharon Reeves? Yes? Mrs. Reeves, my name is James Peterson. I think we need to talk about your husband. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, who is this? I'm someone who knows what Alan's been doing with his evenings, and I think you deserve to know too. Another pause, longer this time. What are you talking about? Your husband is having an affair with my wife. I have proof. If you'd like to see it, I can meet you somewhere private. The silence stretched on so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was very small. Where? We met at a coffee shop on the other side of town. Sharon Reeves was a petite blonde in her early 30s, wearing scrubs that suggested she'd come straight from work at the hospital. She looked like she'd been crying. I showed her the screenshots Magnolia had given me, and some additional photos I'd taken of Alan's car parked outside my house on previous occasions. I'd thought they were work meetings at the time. Now I knew better. Sharon stared at the evidence for a long time without speaking. Finally, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. How long? She asked. At least 6 months, maybe longer. I'm sorry, Mrs. Reeves. I know this isn't easy to hear. She laughed bitterly. You know what the funny thing is? I suspected something months ago. He was working late all the time, taking calls he wouldn't let me hear, being secretive with his phone. But when I asked him about it, he made me feel crazy for being suspicious. That's what they do, I said. They make us feel like we're imagining things. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to make sure everyone knows who they really are. The question is, what are you going to do? Sharon was quiet for a moment, then her expression hardened. I'm going to make him pay. Good, because I have some ideas about how to do that. We talked for another hour. Sharon was angry, but she was also smart. She worked in the hospital's billing department and had access to employment records. More importantly, she knew Alan's routines, his friends, his professional relationships. There's something else you should know, she said as we were preparing to leave. Alan's been bragging to his friends about your wife. He thinks it's funny that he's stealing her from a construction worker. The rage flared again, but I kept it under control. What has he been saying? That she's too good for you, that she's finally figured out she can do better. He calls you. She hesitated. He calls you the caveman. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. James, when you destroy him, and I know you're going to, I want to be there to watch. That afternoon, I met Magnolia at a diner outside of town to compare notes. Sharon's on board, I reported. She's ready to help. Excellent, I've been busy too. Magnolia slid a manila envelope across the table. Financial records. Alan's been skimming money from client accounts to pay for his affair with Mel. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, all charged to fake business expenses. I flipped through the documents. How did you get these? Let's just say I have friends in low places. Her smile was sharp. The point is, this is felony embezzlement. If these records were to find their way to the right people, Alan would be disbarred and probably facing jail time. And you just happened to come across these? I've been investigating my sister and her boyfriend for months, James. I told you, I wanted proof. Well, now I have it. We spent the next hour going through everything Magnolia had gathered. It was more than I'd hoped for. Financial fraud, professional misconduct, violation of client confidentiality. Alan had been using his position at the law firm to impress Mel, showing off by bending rules and cutting corners. The thing about guys like Alan, Magnolia said, is that they think rules are for other people. It never occurs to them that they might get caught. So what's the play? Simple. We give him enough rope to hang himself, and then we pull the rope. The plan we came up with was elegant in its simplicity. We would use Alan's arrogance against him, get him to incriminate himself further, and then expose him publicly in a way that would destroy not just his relationship with Mel, but his career and reputation as well. There's one more thing, Magnolia said as we were leaving the diner. Tomorrow night is the annual Millbrook Bar Association dinner. It's a big deal. All the lawyers in town will be there, along with judges, politicians, and other important people. So Alan will be there with his wife, trying to network and make connections. He's been looking forward to it for months. Her grin was wicked. It would be a shame if something were to ruin his evening. I was starting to understand why Mel's family had never appreciated Magnolia. She was dangerous in a way that made my construction site confrontations look like playground squabbles. What do you have in mind? Leave that to me, but I'll need you to handle something else. Tomorrow afternoon, Mel is supposed to meet with her divorce attorney. I think you should be there. I have a restraining order, remember? I can't go near her. You can't go near your house, but there's nothing stopping you from being in the same public building as her, as long as you don't approach or speak to her directly. I thought about it. What's the point? The point is to rattle her. Mel thinks she has you completely under control. She thinks you're hiding in that motel room feeling sorry for yourself. If you show up looking confident and prepared, it'll throw her off her game. And then she'll make mistakes. Angry people always make mistakes. The next day, I put on my new clothes and drove to the law offices of Blackwood and Associates, where Mel was meeting with her divorce attorney. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I saw her car arrive. Mel looked exactly like what she was, a successful lawyer who had everything under control. Her hair was perfect, her suit was expensive, and she walked into the building with the confidence of someone who knew she was winning. I waited 5 minutes, then followed her inside. The receptionist looked up as I approached. Can I help you? I'm here to see if Mr. Blackwood has any openings today. I might need a lawyer. Let me check his schedule. She turned to her computer, and as she did, I saw Mel walk out of a conference room down the hall, heading toward the bathroom. Our eyes met for just a split second. I saw surprise, then anger, then something that might have been fear flash across her face before she looked away and hurried into the bathroom. Mission accomplished. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood is booked solid today, the receptionist said, but I could schedule you for later this week. That's all right. I'll try somewhere else. As I walked back to my truck, I saw Mel watching me through the window of the conference room. Her lawyer, an older man in an expensive suit, was talking, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. She was scared. Good. That evening, I put on my best shirt and tie and drove to the Millbrook Country Club, where the Bar Association dinner was being held. I didn't have an invitation, but I didn't need one. I just needed to be in the parking lot when the festivities began. I parked where I could see the main entrance and settled in to wait. At 7:30, cars started arriving. Lawyers and judges and other important people in expensive clothes, ready to network and congratulate each other on how successful they all were. At 8 o'clock, Alan's BMW pulled up to the valet stand. He got out looking like $1,000,000 in a black tuxedo. Sharon emerged from the passenger side in a stunning red dress, and for a moment they looked like the perfect couple. If you didn't know that Alan was a cheating embezzler and Sharon was planning his destruction, I watched them walk into the club and then I got out of my truck and followed them inside. The country club was exactly what you'd expect. All dark wood and leather furniture and oil paintings of dead rich guys. The bar association had rented out the main dining room and it was packed with people I recognized from newspaper photos and local TV news. I walked up to the bar and ordered a beer. The bartender gave me a funny look. I was dressed well, but I clearly didn't belong with this crowd. Still, my money was good, so he served me without comment. I found a spot where I could observe the room without being too obvious about it. Alan and Sharon were at a table near the front, and he was already working the room, shaking hands and making small talk with people he wanted to impress. What he didn't notice was that Sharon was excusing herself from conversations and walking around the room, talking quietly to various people. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see the expressions on their faces as she talked. Surprise, concern, anger. Magnolia had been right. Sharon was smarter and more dangerous than Alan had given her credit for. At 9 o'clock, the formal program began. The president of the Bar Association gave a speech about ethics and professional responsibility. Several awards were handed out to lawyers who had supposedly distinguished themselves through their service to the community. Alan sat at his table, applauding politely, and probably thinking about how next year he might be the one receiving an award. That's when Sharon stood up. She walked to the microphone at the front of the room, and the president of the Bar Association looked confused. "Excuse me," Sharon said, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something I need to say." "Ma'am, this isn't really the time," the president started. "My name is Sharon Reeves," she continued, ignoring him. "My husband Alan is sitting right there at table 6, and I have something to share with all of you about the kind of lawyer he really is." The room went dead silent. I could see Alan's face from where I was standing, and he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. "Over the past 6 months," Sharon continued, her voice steady and clear, "my husband has been having an affair with a married woman. He's been using money embezzled from client accounts to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners. He's been violating attorney-client privilege by sharing confidential information with his girlfriend to impress her. And he's been doing all of this while telling his friends that ethics rules are for other people." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see lawyers looking at each other, probably trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. Sharon reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have bank records, hotel receipts, and recorded phone conversations that prove everything I've just said. Copies will be delivered to the State Bar Association and the District Attorney's Office first thing Monday morning." Alan finally found his voice. "Sharon, what the hell are you doing?" She turned to look at him and her smile was ice cold. "I'm doing what you should have done months ago. I'm telling the truth." And then she walked out. The room exploded into chaos. People were talking all at once, some standing up to get a better look at Alan, others pulling out their phones to start making calls. The president of the Bar Association was trying to restore order, but it was hopeless. Alan sat frozen at his table, his face white as paper, while his professional world collapsed around him. I finished my beer and left. I had what I came for. The next morning, I drove to Emma's school and waited in the parking lot for her to come out. I knew Mel would be there to pick her up, and I wanted to see her face when she realized that her perfect plan was falling apart. At 3:15, Emma emerged from the building with a group of her friends. She saw me immediately and ran over to my truck. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Just wanted to see you, sweetheart. How are you holding up?" She glanced around nervously. "I'm okay, but Mom's been really weird lately. She keeps asking me questions about you, like whether you've ever hurt me or scared me. It's creepy." My heart sank. Mel was still trying to turn Emma against me, even after everything that had happened. "Emma, I need you to know that no matter what happens between your mother and me, I love you more than anything in this world. Nothing is ever going to change that." "I know, Dad. I love you too." She looked up at me with eyes that were far too serious for a 15-year-old. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Before I could answer, I saw Mel's car pull into the parking lot. She spotted my truck immediately and drove over, her face twisted with fury. Emma saw her coming and sighed. "I better go. She's going to be mad that I talked to you." "Emma, wait. Here's my number at the motel where I'm staying. If you need anything at all, you call me." "Okay?" She nodded and pocketed the slip of paper just as Mel got out of her car. Emma, get in the car, now! Mel's voice was sharp and angry. Emma obeyed without argument, but she gave me a worried look through the car window as they drove away. Mel didn't look at me at all, which told me everything I needed to know. She'd heard about what had happened at the bar association dinner. She knew her perfect boyfriend had been exposed as a fraud and a cheat. And she was probably starting to realize that her perfect plan to destroy me wasn't working out the way she'd hoped. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. That afternoon, I met Magnolia at a coffee shop downtown to plan our next move. "Alan's finished," she reported with satisfaction. "His law firm suspended him pending investigation. Sharon cleaned out their joint bank account this morning and filed for divorce. And the State Bar Association has opened a formal inquiry into his conduct." What about Mel? That's where it gets interesting. She tried to call Alan about 50 times yesterday, but he's not taking her calls. He's too busy trying to save his own skin to worry about his girlfriend. I felt a grim satisfaction at that news. So she's on her own? Not exactly. She's hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on you. She's also been talking to Emma's school counselor, trying to build a case that you're an unfit parent. The rage flared again, but I kept it under control. What kind of dirt is she looking for? Anything she can find. Financial problems, drinking, other women. She's desperate, James. Her boyfriend is ruined, her plan is falling apart, and she's starting to panic. Good. Panic makes people stupid. Exactly. Which brings me to our next move. Magnolia's smile was predatory. Tomorrow night, Mel is having a girls' night at the house with her law firm friends. They're going to drink wine, trash talk their husbands, and probably plan your complete destruction. How do you know this? Because one of those friends is Lisa Tanner, and Lisa can't keep her mouth shut when she's had a few drinks. She told her sister, who told her neighbor, who told me. I was starting to understand why people underestimated Magnolia. She had an intelligence network that would make the CIA jealous. What's the play? The play is that you're going to crash their little party, not inside the house. That would violate the restraining order. But you're going to make sure they know you're watching. You're going to make them nervous. And then we're going to record everything they say. Because when Mel gets nervous and drunk, she tells the truth. And the truth is going to destroy her. That evening, I drove past my own house for the first time since the incident. It looked exactly the same, but somehow smaller and shabbier than I remembered. The lawn needed mowing, and there were newspapers piled up on the front porch. I parked across the street and waited. At 7 o'clock, cars started arriving. I recognized most of them, Mel's co-workers and friends from the law firm, women who had smiled and made small talk with me at office parties, pretending to like me while probably thinking I wasn't good enough for their brilliant colleague. By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing. I could see them through the living room windows, drinking wine and laughing. My wife and her friends celebrating in my house while I sat across the street like some kind of stalker. At 9 o'clock, I got out of my truck and walked to the edge of my property. Not close enough to violate the restraining order, but close enough to be visible from the house. It didn't take long for someone to notice me. The laughter inside stopped abruptly, and I saw faces appearing at the windows. Mel came to the front door and stared at me across the yard. "What do you want, James?" she called out. I didn't answer. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, looking at the house that used to be my home. "I'm calling the police!" Mel shouted. "You do that!" I called back. "Tell them I'm standing on a public street. See what they say." Mel went back inside, and I could see her on the phone through the window. 5 minutes later, Officer Sullivan pulled up in his patrol car. "James," he said as he got out, "what are you doing here? Standing on a public street, looking at my house." Sullivan glanced at the house where Mel and her friends were watching from the windows. "You know this looks bad, right? Like you're harassing them." "I'm not harassing anyone. I'm not on the property. I'm not making threats. I'm just standing here." Sullivan sighed. "James, technically you're right. But you're also being an ass. These ladies are scared." "They should be," I said quietly. Something in my tone made Sullivan look at me more carefully. "James, what's going on? Really?" For a moment, I considered telling him everything. About the affair, about the financial fraud, about the plan to destroy me and take my business. But Sullivan was a cop, not a friend. And cops had a tendency to side with lawyers over construction workers. "Nothing's going on, officer. I'm just exercising my right to stand on a public street." Sullivan stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "Just Try not to make my job harder than it has to be, okay? After he left, I stood there for another hour. I could see the party was winding down, and the women inside kept glancing nervously in my direction. Good. Let them be nervous. Finally, I got back in my truck and drove away. But not before I saw Mel's face in the window, watching me leave with an expression I'd never seen before. She was terrified. The next day, Magnolia called with news. "It worked," she said, sounding delighted. "After you left, the party broke up pretty quickly. But not before Mel had a few too many glasses of wine and started talking." "What did she say?" "According to Lisa Tanner's sister, who heard it from Lisa herself, Mel spent an hour ranting about you. She said you were stalking her, that you were probably planning to hurt her, that she was afraid you might try to burn the house down or something equally dramatic." "That's ridiculous." "Of course it is. But here's the interesting part. She also said that Alan was a coward who had abandoned her when things got tough. She called him weak and pathetic and said she should have stuck with her original plan." "What original plan?" That's what Lisa asked. And Mel, drunk and angry, told her everything. The whole plan to set you up, make you look dangerous, and take everything you owned. She even admitted to moving money out of your joint accounts. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "Please tell me someone recorded this?" "Better. Lisa's sister recorded the phone call when Lisa called her to gossip about it. We have Mel admitting to financial fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud on tape." "Is it admissible in court?" "Probably not as evidence in a criminal case. But in a divorce proceeding, it'll definitely be useful." We met that afternoon to listen to the recording. It was even better than Magnolia had described. Mel's voice, slurred with wine and sharp with anger, laying out exactly how she'd manipulated me and destroyed my reputation. "The stupid bastard never saw it coming," she said on the tape. "He actually thought I loved him. Can you imagine? Me in love with a construction worker who smells like sawdust and sweat?" Her friends laughed, and one of them said, "So what happens now? Alan's finished, right?" "Alan's a coward," Mel replied bitterly. "He promised me we'd be together, that he'd take care of me. But the second things got difficult, he ran back to his wife. Well, screw him. I don't need him. I've got everything planned out. James will be declared an unfit parent. I'll get full custody of Emma, and I'll take his business. He'll be lucky if I let him keep his truck." "What if he fights back?" another voice asked. Mel's laugh was cold and cruel. "James? Fight back? He's too stupid and too broken to fight back. By the time I'm done with him, he'll be lucky to get a job flipping burgers." As I listened to my wife describing me like I was some kind of pathetic loser she'd been unfortunate enough to marry, I felt the last traces of love or regret disappear from my heart. She wanted to destroy me? Fine. Let's see who destroyed who. "There's more," Magnolia said as the recording continued. "Listen to this part." Mel's voice came through the speakers again. "The best part is everyone feels sorry for me. Poor Mel married to that violent construction worker. Poor Mel afraid for her safety. Poor Mel just trying to protect her daughter. It's perfect." "You're evil," one of her friends said, but she was laughing when she said it. "I'm practical," Mel corrected. "James had something I wanted, so I took it. Now I don't need him anymore, so I'm getting rid of him. It's just business." The recording went on for another 20 minutes, with Mel detailing exactly how she'd manipulated everyone. Me, the police, even Emma, to create the narrative she wanted. When it ended, I sat in silence for a long moment. "James?" Magnolia said quietly. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. I'm absolutely perfect. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Mel wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a sociopath who had been playing a long game to destroy my life, and she was so confident in her victory that she'd bragged about it to her friends. Well, she was about to find out what happened when you underestimated a construction worker who had nothing left to lose. "What's our next move?" I asked. Magnolia's grin was pure evil. "Our next move is to give Mel exactly what she's afraid of. We're going to make her paranoid. We're going to make her sloppy. And then we're going to destroy her." Over the next week, we launched what Magnolia called psychological warfare. It started small. I had flowers delivered to Mel's office with a card that said, "Thinking of you, a friend." She probably thought they were from Alan at first, until she called him and found out he hadn't sent them. Then I had pizza delivered to her house every night for a week. Different places, different times, always paid for in advance. When she called to complain, the restaurants just said someone had ordered it for her address. I drove past the house at different times of day, never stopping, never getting out, just making sure she saw me. Sometimes I'd park across the street from her office and sit in my truck reading a newspaper. Perfectly legal, but unnerving. The effect was exactly what we'd hoped for. According to Magnolia's sources, Mel was becoming increasingly paranoid and unstable. She'd called the police 3 more times, but they couldn't do anything since I wasn't actually violating the restraining order. She'd also made a crucial mistake. She'd fired her original divorce attorney and hired a more aggressive one, a man named David Crenshaw, who had a reputation for taking difficult cases. "Why is that a mistake?" I asked Magnolia. "Because Crenshaw is expensive, and Mel doesn't have as much money as she thinks she does. She's been spending the money she stole from you on legal fees and private investigators. At the rate she's going, she'll be broke in a month." "What about the business? She's still listed as co-owner." "That's our next target. See, Mel made the mistake of signing those co-ownership papers without actually contributing anything to the business. Under state law, that makes her a minority partner with no management authority." "Meaning?" "Meaning you can freeze her out. Change the locks, change the bank accounts, make it impossible for her to access anything. She'd have to take you to court to get access, and that costs money she doesn't have." It was brilliant in its simplicity. I'd been so focused on the personal betrayal that I'd forgotten the business side of things. But Magnolia was right. Mel had overplayed her hand. The next morning, I showed up at Peterson Construction for the first time in 2 weeks. Danny Martinez and the rest of my crew were surprised to see me, but they didn't ask questions. They just got back to work. I spent the day making phone calls, first to my business attorney, then to my bank, then to my insurance company. By the end of the day, Mel's name had been removed from every account and every policy. The locks on the office had been changed, and the security system had been updated with new codes. Legally, she was still a co-owner. Practically, she had no access to anything. It took her less than 24 hours to figure out what had happened. My new cell phone rang at 6 in the morning, and when I answered it, I could hear Mel screaming on the other end. "You bastard! You can't lock me out of my own business!" "It's not your business, Mel. You never contributed a penny to it. You're a minority partner with no management authority. I'll sue you." "With what money? Last I checked, you spent most of our savings on legal fees and hotel rooms." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was dangerously quiet. "You have no idea what I'm capable of, James." "Actually, I do. I've heard the recordings of you bragging about it to your friends." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "That's right, Mel. I know all about your little plan. I know about the money you stole, the lies you told, the way you manipulated everyone. I know everything." "You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask Lisa Tanner what she told her sister after your girls' night. Ask her if she mentioned anything about recording phone calls." I could hear Mel's breathing, fast and shallow, on the other end of the line. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to leave me alone. I want you to stop trying to turn Emma against me, and I want you to admit what you did." "Never." "Then we do this the hard way." I hung up the phone and immediately called Magnolia. "She knows we have the recording," I reported. "She's scared." "Good. Scared people make stupid decisions. How do you want to play this?" "It's time for the nuclear option. I want everyone in this town to know exactly who Mel really is." "Are you sure?" "Once we do this, there's no going back. Mel will be finished in this town." I thought about Emma, cowering in the bathroom while her mother and her boyfriend planned my destruction. I thought about the woman I'd loved and trusted, calling me pathetic and stupid to her friends. I thought about 15 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing to her. I'm sure the nuclear option turned out to be simpler than I'd expected. Magnolia had a friend who worked at the local newspaper, a gossip columnist who was always looking for juicy stories about the town's professional class. All it took was an anonymous tip and a few carefully leaked documents. The story ran on the front page of the Millbrook Gazette 3 days later. Local attorney accused of affair and financial fraud. The article didn't mention me by name, but it didn't have to. Everyone in town knew who was married to Mel Hart. The story laid out everything. The affair with Alan, the stolen money, the plan to destroy me in divorce court, even quotes from the recording of her girls' night confession. By noon, the story had been picked up by the regional papers. By evening, it was trending on local social media. Mel's phone number was disconnected by the next day, but I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The following week, I did something I hadn't done since Emma was little. I went to one of her soccer games. She saw me in the stands and waved, and for the first time in months, she looked genuinely happy. After the game, she ran over to me, still in her uniform, her face flushed with excitement and exertion. "Dad, you came!" "I wouldn't miss it, sweetheart. You played great." She beamed at me, then looked around nervously. "Mom said you might not be able to come anymore. Because of, you know." "Because of what?" "The divorce, and the restraining order. And," she lowered her voice, "the things people are saying about her." My heart clenched. "What are people saying, Emma?" "That she's been lying about you, that she stole money, that she—" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Is it true, Dad? Did Mom really do those things?" I knelt down so we were at eye level. "Emma, your mother and I have problems that have nothing to do with you, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, I love you, and I'm going to fight for you. Okay?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I want to come live with you, Dad. I don't want to stay with Mom anymore." Before I could respond, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Emma, get away from him!" Mel was striding across the field toward us, her face twisted with fury. She'd lost weight, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. She looked like a woman on the edge of a breakdown. "Mom, we were just talking," Emma started. "I said get away from him." Mel grabbed Emma's arm and tried to pull her away, but Emma resisted. "You're hurting me." "Mel, let her go," I said, standing up. "She's fine." "Don't tell me what to do with my daughter." Mel's voice was shrill, drawing stares from other parents. "You have no right to be here." "Actually, I have every right. This is a public place, and I'm here to watch my daughter play soccer." "Your daughter?" Mel laughed bitterly. "You mean the daughter you abandoned? The daughter you threatened with a gun?" I could see other parents gathering around us, watching the drama unfold. Emma looked mortified. "I never threatened Emma with anything," I said calmly. "But you know that, don't you, Mel? Because you were there. You saw exactly what happened. You pulled a gun on me. I pulled a gun when I found you and your boyfriend in my daughter's bedroom, traumatizing her while you planned my destruction. Would you like me to tell everyone what you were really doing that day?" Mel's face went pale. She looked around at the crowd of parents and realized that everyone was listening. "Emma, we're leaving," she said, grabbing for Emma's arm again. But Emma pulled away. "No, I want to stay with Dad." "Emma, I heard you, Mom." Emma's voice cracked with emotion. "I heard you and that man talking about Dad in my room. I heard you say he was stupid and pathetic. I heard you planning to take everything away from him." The crowd went completely silent. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably recording what was turning into the most public family meltdown in Millbrook history. Mel looked around desperately, realizing that she'd lost control of the situation completely. "Emma, you don't understand. I understand that you're a liar," Emma shouted. "I understand that you never loved Dad. I understand that you were just using him. And then my 15-year-old daughter did something that broke my heart and made me incredibly proud at the same time. She walked over to me, took my hand, and said, 'I'm staying with my dad.'" Mel stared at us for a long moment, her face cycling through rage, hurt, and something that might have been regret. Then she turned and walked away without another word. As I watched her go, I realized that this wasn't how I'd wanted it to end. I'd wanted justice, revenge, vindication. But watching my daughter choose between her parents in front of half the town, this felt hollow. Emma was crying now, the adrenaline of the confrontation wearing off. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make everything worse." "You didn't make anything worse, sweetheart. You told the truth. That's never wrong." But as I held my daughter while she cried, I wondered if the truth was worth the price we were all paying for it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Emma came to stay with me at the motel, sleeping on the pull-out couch while we figured out what to do next. Mel didn't try to stop her, which told me everything I needed to know about how broken she really was. My lawyer called to tell me that Mel's attorney had reached out about settling the divorce quickly and quietly. Apparently, she was willing to give me full custody of Emma and most of our assets in exchange for my agreement not to pursue criminal charges for the money she'd stolen. "She wants to leave town," Bob Kingston explained. "Start over somewhere else. She knows her reputation here is finished." I should have felt victorious. I'd won. I'd gotten everything I'd wanted. My daughter, my business, my freedom from a woman who had never really loved me. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Emma noticed it too. Dad, are you okay? We were sitting in the motel room, eating takeout pizza and watching TV. It was the kind of scene I'd imagined when I'd pictured having custody of my daughter, but somehow it felt sad instead of happy. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Emma muted the TV and turned to face me. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you ever really love Mom? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, when you got married, did you love her? Or were you just, I don't know, lonely or something? I thought about it for a long moment. I loved her very much, Emma, or at least I thought I did. I loved the person I thought she was. But she wasn't really that person. No, I don't think she was. I think maybe she tried to be for a while. But people can't pretend forever. Emma nodded sadly. I used to think you and Mom had the perfect marriage. You never fought. You always seemed happy together. We didn't fight because your mother got her way about everything, I said. And I thought that was what marriage was supposed to be like. I thought I was supposed to make her happy, and that would make me happy. But it didn't? No, sweetheart, it didn't. We sat in silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. Dad, Emma said finally, I'm glad you're fighting for us. Even if it's messy and horrible and everyone in town is talking about us, I'm glad you're not just letting her win. Are you sure? Because this isn't easy for you either. Nothing about this is easy, but at least now it's honest. At least now we're not pretending everything is okay when it's not. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized that somewhere in all this mess, she'd grown up. She wasn't the little girl who used to climb on my lap and ask me to read her stories. She was a young woman who understood that sometimes you had to fight for what mattered, even when the fight was ugly. I love you, Emma. I love you too, Dad. The final confrontation came a week later, in the most unlikely of places. I was at the hardware store buying supplies for a job when I ran into Tom and Rick Hart, Mel's father and brother. I'd always gotten along with them reasonably well, but I could see from their expressions that those days were over. James, Tom said, his voice cold, we need to talk. About what? About what you've done to our family. I almost laughed. What I've done? Your daughter destroyed my life, stole my money, and traumatized my kid. But somehow this is my fault? Mel made some mistakes, Rick said. But you've been vindictive and cruel. The whole town is talking about our family like we're criminals. Maybe that's because your sister is a criminal. Tom's face flushed red. You watch your mouth. Or what? You'll do what exactly? We're here to make you an offer, Rick said. Drop the charges. Stop talking to reporters. Let Mel leave town quietly. In exchange, we'll make sure Emma has everything she needs. College fund, car, whatever. You want to buy my silence? We want to end this before it gets worse for everyone. I looked at these two men who had raised the woman who destroyed me, and I realized something important. They genuinely didn't understand what she'd done wrong. In their minds, Mel was the victim, and I was the villain for refusing to quietly disappear. No deal, I said. James, be reasonable. You want me to be reasonable? Fine. Here's reasonable. Your daughter is a sociopath who manipulated everyone around her for years. She stole money from me, lied to the police, tried to turn my daughter against me, and planned to destroy my business. And when she got caught, she didn't apologize or try to make amends. She doubled down and tried to destroy me even more. I'm not finished. My voice was getting louder, and other customers in the store were starting to stare. Your family raised a woman who thinks other people exist for her convenience, who thinks rules don't apply to her, who thinks she can destroy lives without consequences. Well, guess what? There are consequences, and she's going to face every single one of them. Tom stepped closer to me, trying to look intimidating. You better watch yourself, Peterson. Is that a threat? It's a warning. I looked at this 60-year-old man trying to intimidate me, and something inside me snapped. All the rage I'd been keeping under control, all the humiliation and betrayal and pain came flooding out. You want to threaten me? You want to warn me? I stepped closer to Tom, close enough that he could smell the sawdust on my clothes and see the calluses on my hands. Let me tell you something, old man. I've lost everything I cared about except my daughter. My wife, my home, my reputation, all gone. You know what that means? Tom was backing away now, probably realizing he'd made a mistake. It means I have nothing left to lose, and a man with nothing to lose is a very dangerous thing. I looked from Tom to Rick and back again. So here's my warning to you. Stay away from me and my daughter. Don't call, don't visit, don't send messages through other people, because if you come after us, if you try to hurt Emma or interfere with my custody, I will make what happened to Mel look like a love letter. I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at them. Oh, and Tom, tell your daughter that if she ever shows her face in this town again, I'll make sure everyone remembers what she really is. I walked out of the hardware store, leaving two very shaken men behind me. But I wasn't done. Not quite yet. There was one more person I needed to deal with. I found Alan Reeves at Murphy's Tavern, the dive bar on the edge of town where people went when they wanted to drink without being seen. He was sitting alone at the end of the bar, nursing a whiskey, and looking like a man whose world had collapsed around him, which I suppose it had. I sat down on the stool next to him and ordered a beer. He looked over at me, and I saw recognition and fear flash across his face. "James," he said quietly, "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Were you?" "I knew this day was coming. The day when you decided to finish what we started." I studied his face in the dim light of the bar. He looked older than I remembered, older than his 37 years. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair was unkempt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "You look like crap, Alan." He laughed bitterly. "I feel like crap. Lost my job, lost my wife, lost my house. Sharon took everything in the divorce. Everything. Good. Yeah, I suppose you think I deserved it. Don't you?" Alan was quiet for a long moment, staring into his whiskey glass. "Yeah," he said finally. "I deserved it. I hadn't expected that. I'd come here ready for a fight, ready for him to make excuses or try to blame me for his problems. But this broken man sitting next to me seemed genuinely remorseful. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Because I could," he said simply. "Because Mel made it easy. Because I thought I was smarter than you and better than you, and I deserved to have what you had. And now? Now I know I was wrong. About everything." He drained his whiskey and signaled for another. "You want to know the funny thing? I never really loved her. Not the way you did. I just liked the idea of taking something away from someone like you." Someone like me. Blue collar, honest, hardworking, everything I pretended to be but wasn't. He looked at me with eyes full of self-loathing. "I've been a fraud my whole life, James. Mel was just the latest fraud in a long line of frauds." I should have felt satisfaction hearing him admit it. Instead, I just felt tired. "What are you going to do now?" "Leave town. Start over somewhere else, if anyone will hire a disbarred lawyer with a reputation for embezzlement and adultery." He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe I'll become a construction worker, learn to do something honest for once in my life." "It's hard work," I said. "Good. Maybe that's what I need." We sat in silence for a while, two men who had destroyed each other's lives, drinking beer and whiskey in a dive bar while the rest of the town went about its business. "James," Alan said finally, "for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I wanted to say it." I looked at this man who had helped destroy my marriage and realized that I didn't hate him anymore. He was pathetic, broken, already punished more thoroughly than anything I could have done to him. "Apology accepted," I said. Alan looked surprised. "Really?" "Really. You're already finished, Alan. There's nothing left for me to do to you." I finished my beer and stood up to leave. As I reached the door, Alan called out to me. "James, take care of Emma. She's a good kid, better than either of her parents deserved." I nodded and walked out into the night. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Mel had left town the day after I'd confronted her father and brother at the hardware store. No one knew where she'd gone, and honestly, I didn't care. She'd signed over custody of Emma, given me the house and the business, and disappeared from our lives as completely as if she'd never existed. Emma and I moved back into the house on Oak Street. It felt strange at first, being back in the place where it had all started, but gradually it began to feel like home again. We redecorated Emma's room, got rid of most of Mel's belongings, and started building a new life together. Emma was doing well, better than well, actually. Her grades had improved, she'd made new friends, and she seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. Occasionally, she asked about her mother, but she didn't seem to miss her much. "I think Mom was always acting. she told me one day as we were painting the living room. Like she was playing a part in a movie or something. It was exhausting to be around. What do you mean? I mean, I was always worried about saying the wrong thing or doing something that would make her upset, but it was never really clear what would upset her, so I just tried to be perfect all the time. I understood exactly what she meant. I'd spent 15 years walking on eggshells around Mel, trying to keep her happy without ever really understanding what would make her happy. You don't have to be perfect, Emma, I said. You just have to be yourself. I know. It's nice. The business was thriving. Word had gotten around town about what Mel had done, and instead of hurting my reputation, it had actually helped. People admired the fact that I'd fought back, that I hadn't just rolled over and let her destroy me. I had more work than I could handle. Magnolia had become a regular part of our lives. She'd started dating Danny Martinez, my foreman, and the four of us had dinner together most Sunday nights. Emma adored her, and I had to admit that Magnolia's sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude were exactly what our little family needed. You know, she said one Sunday evening as we sat on the porch watching Emma and Danny play catch in the yard, I never thanked you. For what? For giving me the chance to destroy my sister, I laughed. You're welcome, I guess. I'm serious. I'd been waiting years for Mel to finally go too far, for someone to call her out on her bullcrap. You gave me that opportunity. Was it worth it? Magnolia considered the question. She was always going to be a terrible person, James. The only question was whether she'd be a terrible person who got away with it or a terrible person who faced consequences. I'm glad we chose consequences. As I watched Emma laughing and running around the yard, I realized that Magnolia was right. Mel had made her choices long before I'd discovered her affair. I hadn't created the situation. I just refused to be a victim of it. 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a letter. It was forwarded through my lawyer's office with no return address. The handwriting was familiar. James, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've been in therapy for the past few months, and my therapist says I need to take responsibility for what I did to you and Emma. So here it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying to you for years. I'm sorry for cheating on you. I'm sorry for stealing your money and trying to destroy your reputation. I'm sorry for traumatizing Emma and putting her in the middle of our problems. Most of all, I'm sorry for not appreciating what I had when I had it. You were a good husband and a good father, and I threw it all away because I thought I deserved something better. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to write back. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. Take care of Emma. She's lucky to have you. Mel. I read the letter twice, then folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. Emma found it there a few days later when she was looking for a pen. Is this from Mom? She asked. Yes. Are you going to write back? I thought about it. No, I don't think so. Good, Emma said. We don't need her anymore. She was right. We didn't need Mel anymore. We had each other, and we had a good life, and we had a future that belonged to us.